We're going to get to.
We're back on Inside Tennessee. John North checking his schedule for dinner. Susan, it's morning. We should be looking at biscuits and gravy.
We should.
Your question to Representative Jason Zachary.
Well, you all did do some good things for school safety.
Yes.
You passed a bill, a school safety bill, and part of that was giving $140 million to put an SRO officer, safety officer in every school. Tell me what else is in that bill and how it's going to help the schools and hopefully prevent some of the angst that children are going through right now.
Yeah, so it's important for people to remember, we started working on the school safety bill in January. It passed toward the end of session, but that kind of is to my point about a comprehensive bill. It takes us a long time to be able to work that through the committee system and pass it. And so the funding you're talking about was just in the budget. So it was roughly $140 million for an SRO in every school. People in Knox County will say, we've already got an SRO.
Right.
That'll be an additional roughly $70,000 that'll go to those schools. So some of the larger schools can add our SRO if they need to, or it helps pay for the SROs that are there. We also are going to put a Department of Homeland Security officer in every single county. So their responsibility will be to coordinate with the schools, the school system, and assess threats. So it's another layer that is not there right now. And the school safety bill that you're talking about was a comprehensive safety bill. Most people don't realize that schools were not required to lock their doors.
Right.
And so that's in there. There's steps for security officers have to take active shooting. They have to walk through the active shooting training. That's a big deal. There's an action plan for additional safety. You got to be careful with what you ask schools to do and what can be made public, because obviously they have certain security protocols. But it was a comprehensive bill requiring schools to take certain steps to make sure those schools are hardened and protected. And then we did additional, I believe it was $40 million in grants to help with like the filming that goes on the windows, so that way kind of with the Covenant shooter where she broke out or shot out the window was able to reach in. And then we did an additional $14 million for private schools to be able to help them do the same. So I think all in all for school safety, it was about $300 million roughly, give or take, recurring. And then we had this comprehensive school safety bill. Then we also had an additional bill that passed that allows the private school to work with the public school system and gain approval to use some of their security, if they're able to help provide more security there. So we took significant steps related to school safety.
Should we have metal detectors in schools?
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. This week, I actually had some of those conversations with students. So I spoke to multiple different classes today, end of the year, talking to government classes. And we talked about the West High School shooting. I'd say shooting where a gun went off. He was 14.
That would be a shooting, by the way.
It would be a shooting. He broke the law. He was 14 years old, not legally able to own a gun. Took a gun into a school, not legally able to do that. So we had laws in place, and it obviously didn't stop that. And then the gun went off. And so the students said, "Well, what other steps can we take?" And I was like, "Guys, I mean, we're pushing the point where." Metal detectors are going to be the next step. Clear backpacks. I mean, those are things that are on the table, and I've had people discuss with me, like, listen, it may be time to take these steps. And for something like that, whatever we have to do to ensure our schools are as safe as possible, again, there are no gun zones anyway, so if somebody takes a gun onto a school property, they're breaking the law. And so we got to make sure we take every step necessary, and providing additional security and bringing Homeland Security into all 95 counties will hopefully help us stop threats before they happen.
As a dad, what goes through your head when you get a text alert from us or you see on TV that a gun went off at a high school in Knox County?
Oh, it's terrifying, because you don't know. I mean, many times you just hear there's some sort of shooting at a school, and obviously you're in high school. I mean, your immediate thought is, good God, could it be my son's school? And as a legislator, I mean, I take that, we kind of had this discussion and had that tense conversation early on, but man, I take that very, very seriously. I mean, we have a significant responsibility to appropriate the dollars and pass legislation that empowers and equips the locals to be able to take the steps to make sure our schools are as secure as possible. And it's important for people to remember, Sheriff Spangler and I have talked about this, Chief Nolan and I have talked about this, every school in Knox County has an SRO. Many have multiple officers on site to provide that protection, but in rural communities they don't have that, and so that's why we implemented the funding.
Jason, very simple question, maybe to put a wrap on this. Is part of the problem the fact that there are just too many guns and too easily accessible to guns out there today than when you and I grew up?
Well, there's no doubt, what is it, 450, 500 million guns? I mean, there's a significant amount of guns.
High capacity, high lethal weapons.
I mean, there's a significant amount of weapons.
Is that part of the problem?
There's no doubt. I don't see that as part of the problem, because a criminal, because look at Chicago, you're not allowed to have a weapon in Chicago, and every weekend it's anywhere from 20 to 50 people are shot in Chicago, and you're not supposed to have a weapon there. So a criminal is going to.
It's easy to get them.
But it's always been easy to get them. A criminal is always going to be able to get a weapon if they want one. And Chicago is a perfect example. The shootings in California, Washington, D.C., those are no-gun zones, and people are still able to get guns.
I'm going to move to a controversial taping and get to this.
He's familiar with
Yeah,
that.
oh,
I
yeah,
know you are.
yeah. I was on that. Yeah.
First of all, do you know who did it? Do you know who taped you in this private conference with other Republicans?
No.
You said Democrats are not our friends. Do you believe that?
So it's important to put that into context. So when I was giving my little speech that I was giving, I opened the meeting and asked for it to happen. That tape and my comments are edited, significantly edited. There were many things I said around that providing context, and I even actually named some Democrats in there. My point is, if somebody calls me racist and nobody defends me, and they say all these things about us, again, that we're racist, which is absurd, that person's not our friend, not my friend. If that person's going to make those kind of statements about me, then no, that person's not my friend. So that was my point in making that is, listen, no. I mean, it's like if you're going to, there's no way to reason with that, because if you're going to call me all these things publicly, man, you're not my friend.
So is Sam McKenzie your friend?
He's a colleague for sure.
Is he your friend?
He's a colleague for sure.
You're not prepared to say he's your friend?
I'm saying he's my colleague. I don't have any kind of relationship with Sam other than we're legislators.
Okay.
So.
One other point on this, because the other thing that it captured, I want you to be able to clear it up if you want to.
Sure.
You said of Democrats, they destroy the republic and the foundation of who we are.
Sure. Yeah. So when you've got a party that is for open borders, you've got a party that is for the killing of babies in the womb, you've got a party that literally can't define what a woman is. I mean, those are things that fracture who we are foundationally as a country. And so I don't know how you work with that kind of worldview. Now, does that represent every Democrat? Absolutely not. And again, in a private conversation, taking words out of context, you can construe them to mean anything you want. I mean, there are guys, and I had the tough conversations with many of the Democrats who I do consider my friends, and I did approach some of them and say, man, listen, those comments were taken out of context. I know Bill Beck is one, I shouldn't say names, but I went to on the House floor in our last week and talked to some of those guys and like, listen, man, my comments were not directed at you, and I want you to hear that directly from me. And so I think that was important to do that. But most of what I said in that context, I completely stand by without question.
All right, we've got to take another quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more with Representative Jason Zachary right after this.